failure or no network failure, and a voter can still be identified through the KIMS gate. The network story only comes in at stage 2, where you are doing the results transmission, and that's a discussion I believe which is in the agenda. But for the time being, the UDA position, the Kenya Kwanza position, is that identification of voters must have digital footprints, and we stick with the technology, no physical register.
Thank you, Chair. For record, we would like to say that we in Agano, and I myself as a presidential candidate, have no problem with electronic voter identification. We are speaking both from a party position, and for me it's experiential, as I explain in a short while. I've not heard this CEO say that the alphanumeric will not be available. I've heard, and maybe this can be corrected, that depending on the circumstances, yes, it will be looked into, and that should give anybody, it gives us comfort. The only area that would be of worry to us is what happened if there was no connectivity and things like that. And you have said that it will be able to work, and it works offline. You have said you've learned from the 2017 mistakes, and you are no longer in that space. If I can backtrack a little, everything is going electronic. Even for those of us in any space, I'm in the legal profession, and any opportunity to do things electronically, we are running to it. It's the way to go, and there are a lot of quotes and sayings about electronic, including, and this has no reference to anyone here, that it's only a fool who would, given the two choices, who would not choose electronic. I have been a victim of the alphanumeric myself, particularly in the last election. If there is a system of, I know a colleague out there said, the print register has not been the problem, but for me it has a problem, and particularly in the year 2017. I was running for Senate in Lamu County, and everybody knew I had got that seat. Hata wale walikuwa wanaipigia kura walikuwa wanasema, wakili, hiki kiti ni chako na hiki ni cha watu kama wewe. Uende kule kwa seneti, mkutane na Seneta Emos wako, mawakili wezako, Seneta Orengo. But woe and behold, what happened from the alphanumeric in Pate, in Kiunga, you name it, in Boni, in those places where I couldn't reach. I woke up one day and I learned there are levels of rigging. Finally, but though there were also additional measures, like what has been referred as uchaguzi wa vifaranga, you know, where a senator who has a knack of fighting every woman who crosses his way got in instead of me. Finally, also I know that worked, but I'm saying if there is anything that can be abused. And this also has to do with identification cards. And one of my colleagues here, we would just say a very quick vote. I think for us, we are saying, even the court is changing its own position. I must acknowledge, learned friend, Paul, I have not looked at the authority. You could have looked in between the lines. But I sense in another election, if there are holdings as to what you said, I don't think next time the court would hold what it has held in respect of it would uphold the rules you have referred to and sections as being sections that should bind the fact that the world is going electronic. So for us, and for me, I want to say to you, this is the way things are going. No judge, no court in my respective submission, living in my generation, would not consider what an old English judge said, consider the circumstances, the political and the social, economic times of what we are living in, and come to a ruling that all things put on the level plane, will make a ruling on the basis of the electronic. It's a way to go. It will be easier, it's more verifiable. But let my colleague mention here another experience, and then we can move on to somebody else. Jane, please, if you may.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Jane Mudiga. I'm the organizing secretary for Agano. In the past, we've had cases whereby desperate candidates would go to the ground and maybe buy ID cards from some youth or the like, or sometimes you may have a voter who have lost an ID just a few days, a few weeks or something before the day of voting. So the CEO, maybe I would want some clarification on this, that when you talk about the use of electronic system, first preference, and in this preference, actually, the most important part is identification through the the fingerprints. That means that the first option is using the fingertips, and then the second option would be the biometric. Would only go for complementary, where you need to produce the ID as the very last resort. So that means that you are assuring Kenyans that we could actually vote. You don't have to really, miss voting just because you don't have an ID. It's a clarification I want to get.
Thank you. I think a number of issues have been raised. Marjan and Professor, would you want to address some? Areas around possible manipulation of the register and the KIMS to any archive the data and other areas.
Take up the issue of whether political parties will be allowed to see what is being.
Thank you.
We could
Thank
take up that issue of whether political parties could be allowed to observe the e-register that is being loaded onto the KIMS kit.
Thank you.
Maybe as you respond, you might want also to comment on the fact that there is an interim order against the commission that requires you to have registers. And your lawyers came to court and said that the registers are ready and that they are there. And an interim order was saying that you must provide them on election day. Maybe you want to comment on the issue of compliance with that order.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The issues related to legal aspects.
CEO, excuse me. Please go there, please.
Thank you very much for your questions and clarifications. Actually, for me, it means we are paying attention to what we are discussing. And so on the issues, matters legal, issues related to Section 69, Section 44, and the issue of the interim orders that we've just discussed. I think our legal counsel, Mr. Oye, is here. He will be in a position to address. Let me address the other issues that were raised in relation to use of KIMS kits. The first question was regarding the issue of SD cards.
Sound.
Are you changing?
So the first question was on the issue of SD cards and whether the SD cards are actually encrypted or not. My answer to that question is yes. The SD card is the information that resides in the SD card is encrypted, and therefore, if the SD card is going to be lost, nobody can be able to access that information unless you have the decryption key. So then the information actually inside the SD card is actually secure. The other question is on the archiving of the voters who have already voted. Yes, the system basically automatically archives any person who has voted. And archiving does not mean deleting. Archiving means that you are marked that you have already voted. And therefore, this information, if we are even to avail it in the future, we can even tell you who has voted. The only thing we cannot be able to tell you who he has voted for who. But in terms of who has voted, what is his age, what is his sex, what is the sex, and the rest, that information can be provided. How effective is the KIMS kit in identifying? How did it, I think we all know, and that we did not have any problem in 2017 in terms of identification. In fact, I want to confidently say that by 5, almost all the voters who had turned up the polling station had been identified. Maybe at that particular time we were also using a combination of the KIMS kit and the physical register, but in terms of identification, it worked very, very effectively. We never had any challenges, and in fact, you alluded to the fact that the problem is not even identification here. The problem is results transmission. That is what you say. And therefore, we did not have any challenge in as far as identification is basically concerned. Then the other issue was in the tender document, it was indicated that the technology will come with a mobile device management system. So is that mobile device management system there? My answer to that is yes. The mobile device management system is there, and you can be able to use it to poll all the devices that have actually been deployed for the purpose of this election. And we are ready to provide you with all the information regarding the kits that are going to be deployed. And therefore, you'll know which kits have actually been used for the purpose of identification. And not just identification, but also later on they are going to be used for the purpose of results transmission. Then the other issue is regarding, are they going to also be real-time? There's going to be real-time connectivity or not? I wanted to restate the fact that I said that for the purpose of identification, the KIMS kit is going to work offline. But remember, the KIMS kit also has got 2 SIM cards. The primary SIM card and the secondary SIM card, which is basically the backup. This KIMS kit, in order for the MDM to poll them, they must also be accessible to the device. And therefore, the MDM will be able to poll using the connectivity. And therefore, you are able now to poll and say, this device is actually working, it's actually at this particular place. And therefore, the KIMS kit, and I also stated before that the KIMS kit will be used to transmit the channel at a specific time. It cannot transmit when it's not connected. So it's going to be connected so that you can be able to poll and that you can be able to send some information regarding turnout. But in as far as identification is concerned, the KIMS kit is going to be used offline. Now there's a second question that basically followed that. Is the KIMS kit geo-fenced? And the other backup kits, are they geo-fenced? My answer to it is yes, because at the opening of the polling station, whereby the information in the KIMS kit is going to be for a given sector beyond the polling station. At the opening of the polling station, you use the QR code to log the polling station to the 700 voters who are actually in that polling station. And therefore, the information that is going to be used for the purpose of identification is going to be the 700 maximum, or the 200, or the 19, whoever has actually been, is in that polling station. So the KIMS kit is going to lock itself. It is going to lock itself to the 700 voters for that specific polling station. And therefore, all identification will be going through the 700 or the number of the registered voters in that polling station. So So that is how the KIMS kit is going to work. I think there was the issue of, and also the backup kits. The backup kits also, you also asked whether they're also going to be geofenced. My answer to is yes. Before you use them, still, when you bring the backup kit and you insert the SD card, the SD card, you still also need to use the QR code to lock yourself to the same 700 voters. So you are not going to go away from that. You are going to use the 700 voters in that specific polling session. In terms of a gazetted, registered polling station, I think at some opportune time the Commission is going to gazette the number of voters in each and every polling station. That is going to be done. IBC, can IBC demonstrate what is being populated in the SD cards? I think this is something that the Commission can be able to deliberate upon and provide this direction at the same. But personally, as a person, I have no problem. I have no problem in stakeholders going to observe what is actually being done. Like I said, we have got a factory specifically for producing the KIMS kit. Even as we speak, there are people who are working there. We have not reached that stage of populating information into the duplicating the SD card. But if that is requested, I'm sure the Commission actually, they are hearing and they can be able to provide direction with regard to that. I also wanted to, there was a question for me just to provide assurance that that everybody is going to vote if we are going to use this method. Yes, everybody is going to vote. Who is a legitimate voter is going to vote if we use the KIMS kit. So as long as you come with your identification document and you present yourself there, because that is the only way we can be able to positively identify you. Like I said before, the default method is to use your biometrics, your fingerprints. But if it's be able to positively identify you. Like I said before, the default method is to use your biometrics, your fingerprints. But if it fails, you will still give us your identification document. We will take it, enter your ID number or your passport number into the KIMS kit, and it will retrieve your information. Once this information is retrieved, we can be able to see who is there. Remember also, there are people who do not have fingers. They don't have hands. So does it mean that they are not going to vote? They are going to vote because we are going to use that method to identify them. And once we identify, we can be able to see them. The picture is actually there, and therefore they will be allowed. To vote. There was the issue of where there is no connectivity. What happens? I think we are going to talk about that in terms of results. But I wanted to let this meeting know that as a commission, we are not saying that the physical register should not be used. We are saying that if we are to use a physical register, it should be the last resort.
Sorry, I see the media is on this side. The case in the High Court is coming up on 18th of July for here in the parties hearing. But meanwhile, there are conservatory orders staying the of the fiscal register. That's my understanding from Mr. Paul Mangi and Mr. Oye. What we shall do as we wait for the hearing and determination of that case is the Commission then will proceed with the ballot printing as well as printing the register for each polling station in terms of what we have in the KIMS kit as we await that determination of that case or further deliberations. I don't know who went to court, but I'm sure the lawyers then can advise on the way forward. Instead of us discussing here, because the matter's in court, I think we leave it that way for now. We shall print the register as we wait for other deliberations in court and or any other forms of discussions and settlement. I think that will be the way out for this matter. We can move on to the next item.
There's one aspect you have not still handled. The issue of whether you can allow accountability and reliability of the content that is being loaded whether the commission is open enough to allow political parties to observe the process of what is being loaded into the KIMS kit.
Yes, I got your question. I thought the CEO attempted to answer it. We have a factory where we are processing the KIMS kits. We can ask the presidential candidates to join me on a tour of that factory. You will observe what's happening. We have not reached the stage where we are loading the data, but the kits have been prepared. And any time now, we can agree on a date when we can tour, maybe then we can be able to be on the same page. I think that would be good for transparency of the process. Presidential candidates or their agents, that's yeah, we can work around that. Let's agree on that. But a very small number of maybe maximum 2 people from each side, because of the sensitivity of the process. So we are open to that. I think the team then, the CEO, can liaise with the good thing is that you are not many, so we can arrange this quickly. And you're all here. By the end of this session, we can agree.
Just on a related matter to that, if the law mandates the commission to set up a technology committee, I don't know when you're going to be setting that one up. I think a lot of the technical issues we're discussing will be thrashed out if you set up that technology committee and have stakeholders be part of it.
2017, we had a committee and somebody went to court. And that provision of the law was declared unconstitutional. So that committee was ceased to exist. So we shall not have a committee with the stakeholders, but we are available to engage, and you work with us this journey. So we shall arrange that team. By the end of the day, we shall agree which date we are going to the factory, and we see the processes ongoing there. So thank you. Can we wrap this up, please?
Mr. Chairman, I just thought the neater way to wrap it up. What is being questioned? It's not identification, electronic identification. It's the issue of complementarity. So our ending note should be, it's quite clear that the primary method is electronic. The issue now left open for the course of the complementarity, so that we are clear and we move on. And we'll appreciate short, precise interventions, short, precise answers, so that we can finish.
I think maybe just one last thing, Mr. Chairman. It is on record that in 2017, 2.5 million voters were not identified through the KIMS kits. And those KIMS kits in 2017 were still new. We have been keeping them in storage for the last 5 years. We have already been told that 4,000 of them are defective. 4,000 out of 46,000 is a big percentage. So therefore, we really are not saying we are opposed to technology. In fact, we are not saying that technology should not be applied. But what should be noted also is that our elections are not 100% technology based. Technology is a small part of this election. The rest of the election, by law and by practice, is actually manual. The casting of the vote is manual. And a big part of it is actually the casting of the ballot. So therefore, we are not saying we have a problem with technology at all. We also know, Mr. Chairman, that these gadgets... Are we reopening the conversation again? No. It's just to expand the areas of conversation. And, these gadgets will be used by human beings. They will not use themselves. And we have a concern, Mr. Chairman, concerning the personnel that has already been appointed by this commission. That concern was expressed by our presidential candidate in his letter to the commission on the 5th of this month. Mr. Chairman, we have noted some very worrying trends with ethnic imbalance of returning officers both at the county and at the constituency level. This country is a country of at least 50 ethnic groups. 50 ethnic groups. But we have noted that out of 47 county returning officers, nearly 10 are from one community. Out of 47.
Give some direction.
Out of 200.
What you are raising now is a totally new issue, which we have no problem discussing, but I thought we need to move in a structured manner. Let's finish with the agenda of the day, then we can address that issue. And I remember addressing it in the correspondence between Asmio and ourselves. We can revisit it now and make clarity on it, but I suggest we finish the agenda of the day. Yes. Yeah, then we can...
that's an issue we want to put on record today.
Yes, I have no problem with that. We are here for you. But let's just finish the issue of the results part, then we can take a note of, you can complete that line. Thank you. Yeah. Marjan, please proceed on the result part. Then if you have any other question, please hold it so that we can move in a structured manner. I agree that the primary identification is biometric. The commission will prepare the registers, but we don't have time to wait for the outcome of the. We have run out of time. The decision then to make is subject to the court judgment or ruling, whatever will come out, is whether to use the register in the manner we used 2017, or whether we shall have the register at the polling stations, and if it's required, if the KIMS kits fail, then the commission will have to make a decision whether to use it or not. I think those are areas we can revisit when the matter comes up in court. So, Marjan, proceed. I'm trying to move this meeting forward, and I know we have the ladies and gentlemen in this room, you want to run out and start seeing your voters out there, so we don't want to be here the whole day. Is it about the register?
Thank you, Chairman. I do apologize if I have to interrupt. But I appreciate the fact that you agree that you prepare to have the manual register as a backup, as a secondary document, should the courts uphold and extend their current interim orders. But as we say that, we need to agree on what are the protocols. Because by the time you escalate to fall back on the secondary document, which is the manual register, it should be agreed that this will happen. All agents will have agreed, it's escalated to this level, and approval will come at this level. So it's just not there for you when people feel like it. There has to be protocols agreed here on that point. So I hope we'll work on that going forward. Thank you.
Your comment is noted. Thank you.
I wanted somebody to protect the...
Briefly, not much detail. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, it's about the results part. So what normally will happen after voting has been done, counting has been completed, the results from 34A is going to be filled by the presiding officer after the counting, and this results is going to be confirmed by the agents. Once they confirm, then the returning officer, the presiding officer, and the agents will sign the Form 34A. After signing the Form 34A, the presiding officer will now launch the results transmission application, and after that they will capture the image of the Form 34A and transmit the Form 34A to the National Tallying Center as well as the Constituency Tallying Center. And thereafter, the presiding officer will give copies of the Form 34As to all the agents. One copy is going to be pasted at the ballot box, one copy is going to be pasted at the door of the polling station, and after that, the presiding officer will then now move physically with the physical documents, that is the Form 34As, to the Constituency Tallying Center. The Constituency Tallying Center returning officer is going to receive the Form 34As, and of course, before that, would have been in a position to access the images of what was scanned before and sent at the polling station. So, through our backend system, the returning officer is in a position to access the images of the Form 34As for the respective constituency. The returning officer, even as they are waiting for the physical copies to come, they will basically populate the information using the image to the Form 34B. Form 34B is a collation of all the Form 34As. Once all the polling stations have been populated, we will use now the physical copy to verify again, entry one by one. The physical copies received will be used to verify all entries in each and every polling station, presence of the political party agents. Once that one now is done, then the agents again will sign the Form 34B plus the returning officer and the deputy returning officer. Then from there, the physical copies again will be taken by the returning officer to the National Tallying Center returning officer, who is the chairman. And I wanted to just state maybe what is going to happen at the tallying center. We will have, of course, when the presiding officer goes to the Constituency Tallying Center, they will go with the 6 ballot boxes, presidential, governor, and the rest. So it will be expected that you will have to work and make sure that all those announcements are basically made for each and every polling station, because the returning officer for each and every polling station results come, he must be able to announce that, and therefore he will be expected to announce all of them. But because of the importance of the presidential results, this time that's why we have recruited two deputy returning officers. So the returning officer can now be relieved to take the physical copies to the national returning officer. The national returning officer also will be in a position to access the scanned image of the Form 34As, and also if they want, they can be able to start preparing their Form 34C. But a suffice to say that Form 34B is the soft copy will also be scanned and also be transmitted to our backend servers. And therefore, what is going to be available for the purpose of public and for the purpose of stakeholders is going to be the scanned copies of Form 34As as well as Form 34Bs. And at the National Tallying Center, they will be handing over and taking over on the physical forms that have been received from the returning officers. The chairman and of course the team, they will actually use the Form 34Bs that have been brought to them to verify all the entries of the polling stations using the physical Form 34As. And after verifying all of them, they will now be able to prepare Form 34C. Of course, as they do that, they pay attention to any errors that may actually occur. These errors are going to be recorded in error collection form, and this report is also going to be presented. In essence, the National Returning Officer must satisfy himself that all the entries in the Form 34Cs have been physically verified by the Form 34As, and that the agents present are also going to validate the same. And finally, then the Form 34C is going to be signed by the National Returning Officers, as well as the political party agents. It's only after that then the chairman can be able to declare who is the winner. Suppose there is no winner because no one has met the 50% plus one margin and the 25% of the majority counting, then it means that a run-off is going to be there, and the chairman is going to declare accordingly that in the next 30 days, then there's going to be a run-off. So that's a simple projection in terms of how the results is going to be sent from one point to the other. Thank you very much.
In all this, what we are saying as a commission is that all the presidential candidates, we are encouraged to have agents in all polling stations. Your agents will have copies of the results. Please train your agents, find a way of also doing your own tabulations. We also had a meeting with the media. A fraternity will be deployed in the 290 constituencies for purpose of transparency. The results belong to the people of Kenya, and the commission will do its part, ensure that all the results are transmitted. There will be a public portal for the media, for the transmitted scanned copies of the forms. The images of the forms arriving at the National Tallying Center will be verified against the physical copies. Before then, the commission prepares that 4C. So all those measures form part of the results part. So let's now have your input, comments, starting with the SMEO. Then we move to Uda. Gano, if you have anything, and Roots Party in that order. Thank you.
You allow me to cover a few points, all related and very, very fast. One of them is the issue of agents. The perennial complaint in every petition, whether presidential or gubernatorial, I can participate in, is kicking out of the agents by your presiding officers. So to enhance transparency, we are proposing that you not only release the identification badges for agents to candidates 2 days before, but that identification plus the oath are the only thing an agent needs to get access, and your officers must not have any authority to send out an agent unless if an agent commits a criminal offense, in which case the police at that polling station will have recorded that incident. I want to agree with your proposal that agents should sign. Therefore, the presence of the agent, unless if they have committed a criminal offense and the party is at liberty to replace, the signing of the result form, 34A, and in all other elections by the agents, ought to be mandatory, and your form should have a column for the agent to say, I agree or disagree with the results. We also want, it's good you are transmitting the results. You have promised us copies, but you've been printing only 6 copies of the form, 4 of which are for use by the commission. As you can see in this presidential election, we have 4 presidential candidates. Therefore, 2 copies are not enough. We don't want to ask you to print more copies and income more money for the government. We just want the right as agents to be able to take WhatsApp images of the form once it is ready. That way, whatever you transmit electronically cannot have vifaranga via computer, because the form will be out, everybody will have it, and the press, if they are in the room, will also have it. The gun on announcing what is tallied at the station should be removed when either the press or other people say how many votes were garnered, and they are on that poll. They are not making the official announcement. They are giving the provision. They just state this is what we witnessed. That enhances transparency. So 2 things. Your officers must not have the right to send out agents unless if there is an incident recorded by the police and the party has a right to replace. Number 2, WhatsApp images. Those who are able to have smartphones, and I'm certain that in every room there will be at least 1 or 2 people with a smartphone. We must take WhatsApp images. The story of the Barangapia computer will die at that stage, and that will enhance the transparency of the elections, which is ordered or commanded by Article 86 of the Constitution. Only one point I'm being reminded by my principal, that the order of counting in every polling station, it should be clear that they start with the presidential ballot. They don't always do so. I've been at polling stations where it is not done that way. So let the commission be clear. And finally, people who commit deliberate electoral offenses, that is employees of the commission, and they hide behind the word commission. We want to request you to unequivocally and publicly tell your officers that anybody who violates the electoral code deliberately, we will face the law individually. Last year I tried to privately prosecute 3 of your officers. Now that we are busy in elections, I may drop the appeal, but we need them to know that it is personal responsibility. The elephant called the commission must be dissected to that polling clerk, to that candidate, to everybody. Thank you. So that we don't come back, I'm being reminded that I think the audit report had already been asked in the previous by our competition in UPA, and I think we are in agreement that yes, we need the audit report by KPMG, but that now can also be bared to us as we inspect your factory.
Thank you. UDA.
Thank you, Chair. On the 9th of June, when you invited the party representatives, candidates, and the agents to simulate the electronic transmission result transmission system, the stakeholders pointed quite a number of shortcomings on that system that was presented to us. Number 1, it was not user-friendly. We asked you to make it user-friendly. And the second, there were also a number of other bottlenecks, particularly transmission and the time it was taking for information to be transmitted from a polling station to you. I think we would like to know what effort has been made, or whether you're going to be doing another simulation that includes the comments we had made. Second, we fully embrace the system of the results forms pathway that you have presented. The bigger concern is on the transmission of the results from the polling station direct to the National Tally Center. And we will ask the Commission to share with the chief agents the GPS coordinates of all the KIMS kits. I think it's critical so that we can know it is actually the KIMS kit that was deployed to that polling station that is transmitting, but also provide a backup access to chief agents so that they are able to confirm the GPS of the KIMS kits as they transmit the results. We will also want you to make assurance not only to us but also to the public that the public portal will be accessible even when many Kenyans are logging in. I think we need that assurance that information will be available at any particular time. And of course, I know the Commission has asked parties to have one agent in a polling station. We are asking you allow candidates also that are going to be in this election to be able to have agents to represent them in the various polling stations where voters will be voting. Thank you. Unless my colleagues wants to add, I think Dr. Linda Muzumba is head of legal in Presidential Secretary.
Chair, I don't know whether you can hear me, but during the 2017 petition, the question arose about the presidential, ballots, being more than the others, and then the issue arose that people are preferring to vote for the president rather than the others. But the question arose, what happens to the other five?
Say that again. There's a bit of noise here.
Sorry, Chair, I was asking, during the 2017 presidential election petition, the question arose, what happens to the other 5 ballot papers where a person does not wish to vote for the president? And the Commission, through that process, explained that each ballot paper, even if one elects not to mark it, ought to put it inside the different ballot boxes. So we just wanted to know the accountability mechanism that the Commission has put in place to ensure that if we're going to get 2,000, let's say, votes in a ballot box for presidential, that we shall get the same number in the others, so that we don't have a situation where ballot papers in the presidential are many more than in the other boxes. We just wanted that accountability mechanism to be explained. Thank you.
Yes, now on the, let's finish with Uda, you're done. I'll go to Agano, then I see Asmia is not done yet. But let's finish with Agano first. Yeah.
Asanti mwenyekiti, yangu tu ni kuongezea yale yamesemwa na wenzangu na kusema hivi, ningependa kuomba commission ya kwamba muongezee matangazo ya kuwaelimisha Wakenya kuhusu haki zao kwa polling station. Ni ukweli wa kwamba returning officer hawa wenyu hata hao wanarig kushinda wengine wote. They confuse people, they act like they are small gods, and if you don't have an agent, you are at their mercy in the particular place. Na kaza kama mimi sijui kama nitaweza kupata maagent kote, Madera na kwingineko. Unajua mimi sina pesa ya serikali ama ya kashfa ya kuandika maagent popote. And I have seen them do these things, but let me finish my point. Let me stick to the point.
Let's have some decorum in the meeting.
No. Yeah,
Yes,
I'm talking the truth. Please
Chairman,
run more campaigns, please, on educating on their rights. I agree with the honorable running mate. Allow people to use electronic gadgets to capture what's happening, because there's a lot of abuse that goes on there. And one more point from us, Bishop, very quickly.
we want to seek leave, attend to other matters, but we have a very robust team behind us. We apologize for leaving before the end. But duty call.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. My question is just direct to the point. CEO has just told us that every Kenyan who is legitimate to vote has right to vote. I don't know what arrangements are in place regards the people who are likely to be in the hospital or possibly they are not fully incapacitated Others are aged at home. What are the arrangements to have them receive their legal right to vote? Thank you.
Yes, we want to deal with those comments.
Mr. Chair.
Is it about the results?
Yes.
Yes, transmission, yeah.
Mr. Chair, you talk about 1,111 polling stations. Mr. Chair, you talked about 1,111 polling stations that do not have connectivity to 3G. What methodology are you going to use to have access to all these polling stations? The second issue is the issue of the transmitted images. They will be stored in your servers, and you said you will have an access to a portal. Are you going to allow us to have an API access to that portal? And are we able to get it maybe 2 to 3 weeks prior for purpose of integration? The third issue is the issue of the transmission that has been raised earlier. Is that the process wasn't as successful as the simulation? Are you able to give us, number one, that the same can be redone again? Number two, whether the same can be commenced where all the police stations are tested so that we are able to successfully stress test the entire infrastructure. Thirdly, in the 2017 elections, there was the issue of the servers. Are we having our data stored locally, or is it being hosted outside? And if it is stored locally, how certain are we that the entire transmission from the entire 46,000 polling station will be successful? Additionally, Mr. Chair, just on the earlier issue of the KIMS kit, you did transfer from the old infrastructure provider to a new service provider with the Smartmatics. How certain are we that the entire data that was originally stored by the earlier service provider has been transferred? This in regard to the biometrics data. That information has it that it was not successfully done and was not successfully ported. And in that issue, if it was successfully ported, are you able to provide us a data destruction certificate from the earlier service provider, guaranteeing that the entire data that was originally stored by them has been destroyed so that the new service provider has access to that? And finally, Mr. Chair, the data will be transmitted from each of the polling stations through a secure connection. How secure is the entire connection? Because earlier the CEO alluded to the fact that the transmission or each of the KIMS kit will remain offline until the time of connection. So technically, any KIMS kit can be able to transmit, because technically it means that if the KIMS kit are not necessarily online, the issue of geofencing is not there. The CEO talked about each of the KIMS kit will be geofenced. That is not the case, because what is geofenced technically is the SD card, but not the actual hardware, which should be restricted to operate within a given area. So what you have locked within each of the polling stations is the SD card, but not the actual hardware that we expect should be locked. Because if you don't lock the specific hardware, we have information that about 4,000 KIMS kits are lost. So technically, you're saying that anybody can walk in with any KIMS kit and be able to have access to the same. So provide us that update at least so that we're able to be sure of that. Then finally, the connectivity issue, Mr. Chair. Just for a second. We are saying that each of the polling center will provide an image. I mean, the capability of each of these networks transmitting more than 24 GB of data within any given time, owing to the fact that every one of them will transmit data at one given hour, will be impossible. And the last 2017 election, the biggest challenge was that the data was transmitted at the given time and was text data. This time it will be image data. So if our infrastructure cannot have the capability to host this data on real time, we'll have a serious crisis. There's a possibility that your data centers will not support this capacity. And we would like the same done with an actual testing. If the last testing wasn't successful, can you show us by a demonstrable test that it's actually going to work? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Lastly, Roots Party.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, for hosting us and the other presidential candidates. We'd like to appreciate what you have always done. You have, as you mentioned, an open door policy, you and your commissioners. Thank you for all listening to our concerns. But for now, my presidential candidate and myself would request leave. We were here the first ones in the morning. We've just started our campaigns and we would like to attend to other matters. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I will ask Professor, you and the CEO and anybody from the technical team to make comments on the issues that have been raised. But just suffice to say that at every polling station, we shall have sufficient result forms for all the agents of presidential candidates who will be in attendance. Yeah, only 4 presidential candidates, and 4 forms will be available in each polling station. So, but again, as a commission, we shall allow transparency. The media, yourselves, your teams can take WhatsApp images of the results. We have no problem with that. Tabulate your results, come to the National Tallying Center with your results, so that we compare what we have and what you have. That's what we are saying for transparency purposes. Professor Marjan.
At least I'm safe. There are a number of issues. I will only respond to some. I will leave others for my colleagues, including the CEO. The starting point is the issue of kicking out of agents by POs. We had discussion with our staff yesterday. As you may be aware, we have all our national staff undergoing a planning meeting as we speak in Bomas, planning for the election. And one of the things, one of the discussions we had was about agents. It is not the intention of the policy to kick out any agent of any political party or candidate. And if the allegations of agents being kicked out, then the commission needs to be alerted, the presiding officer needs to be alerted, the county election manager needs to be alerted so that action is taken against those POs. The issue of agents signing results form, it is provided for in the regulations. Agents will sign the results form. But from experience, we know some agents of some candidates, when their candidates are not winning, they don't want to sign the form. And the law envisages that not signing by an agent of the result form does not nullify the result. I think we should be clear on that as well. Okay? The issue of agents taking pictures of the forms, I think we discourage pictures in the polling stations because we want to preserve the sanctity of and the privacy of the voter. And if this can be done in a manner that does not expose, then the commission can have deliberations with stakeholders and see how that can be provided in terms of just taking an image of the result. We can discuss how we can do it. I don't know whether the legal team of IEBC will be in agreement, but I think we can discuss that. Okay? Result transmission simulation challenges. I don't know, somebody has a hand up and I'm still responding.
Thank you. Just one interjection. I think the issue of saying that we cannot have cameras in the polling station because you want to respect the sanctity of the secret vote. Nobody is taking pictures in the booth where the person is. That is where it's not allowed. But in terms of taking the result form or taking a video of the returning officer making the announcement, I think we are permitted to do that.
I thought I said we will sit with you guys and agree on a protocol. Is that a problem? Okay? I didn't say otherwise. Okay? In terms of results simulation, of course, it was a simulation, and a simulation is to test. And when you test, it can either pass or not pass. We did a simulation. There were a few challenges. One of the main challenges was that all our MNOs, mobile network operators, were not on board. They had some logistics in terms of moving some of the kits to the far distant counties where the testing was to, result transmission was to happen. So we had a few challenges, and we had internally said we will redo it again. And so when we are having learned lessons from that, the challenges that we had. So we will advise you accordingly. Now, yes, the GPS coordinates of all polling stations will be shared with political parties. We actually gave GPS coordinates to the Communication Authority, and that is how they mapped out polling stations or polling centers that are outside 3G coverage areas. So this can be shared with political parties. Public portal accessibility, I will leave to Marjan to address that. In terms of agents, one agent per party not being enough. We have classrooms as our polling stations. And you know our primary schools, how small the classrooms are. We have elective positions where, for example, in MCA, in the last election, in the range of 40 candidates. Just one elective position. And we have a huge number of independent candidates. So if each candidate is to have an agent, that classroom will be congested. Again, we need to have a discussion on how to better manage the agenting process so that the poll officials and the agents can be accommodated in the classrooms that we have. It is not our intention to shut out anybody's agent, but we need to operate within the spaces that we use as polling stations. Now, the question was asked, how do we ensure the 6 ballot papers that you give to a voter is accounted for? It is the Commission's desire that ballot papers issued to a voter are all placed in respective ballot boxes. We've even made it easier to match the color of the ballot paper with the lid of the ballot box. And this is for purposes of ensuring that the voters are guided. And part of our trainings is to ask our presiding officers to ensure that ballot papers issued are put in respective boxes. If you don't want any candidate, leave it blank, but put in the respective ballot box. But sometimes the reason earlier on when we were discussing the issue of the register, the reason why we are saying putting more emphasis on the digital register is because when there is this manual register, if in that particular locality is a stronghold of a particular, for example, presidential candidate, and if they cannot agree on the other seats, at least they agree on a presidential candidate. So in that respect, they may issue ballot papers of a presidential candidate and put in the presidential ballot box, and they may not bother with the others. So this sometimes makes a disparity between the figures of voters for presidential and the other candidates. And hence, it's part of the reasons why we are saying, let's have more on the digital. Our focus should be more on the digital register than the ballot, the physical ballot paper, ballot register of voters. So we will train, it's a matter for training, we will train our presiding officers to ensure that the 6 ballot papers issued to a voter are all accounted for in the different ballot boxes. There were issues about somebody asking people in hospitals their right to vote. I think there is so much the Commission can do. We have designated, gazetted polling stations. We cannot convert every hospital bed to be a polling station. And we have no capacity to bring every 6 patient in a hospital to come to a ballot, to come and vote in a polling station. It is a shared responsibility. As Kenyans, if you have relatives, friends that are able, that can be taken to vote, we will be more than happy to welcome them to the polling station and to facilitate their voting. Reference was made to the 1,111 polling centers with no 3G and perhaps what arrangements we are doing. We've had similar incidents in 2017, and as I've always responded to on this matter, funds allowing, we will deploy satellite modems to ensure that we have coverage in terms of network connectivity in those areas to facilitate transmission of the image of the result forms. In terms of API access, I'll leave it to Marjan. You can deal with that. And also handle that together with the stress test for simulation in terms of the digital images that comes to our servers. On the cloud storage, is it locally? We are not using any cloud storage this time. We are using our resources within the territory of Kenya. We are not outside the country. And so, in the event that there will be a cloud, it will be a cloud within the Kenyan space. But for now, our focus is on the infrastructure that we have deployed to be used within the country in terms of the primary and secondary data centers that we have in the country. The issue of all data in MOFO and the transmission of data from one service provider to the other, you can, Marjan, address that. As well as the geofencing of kits. Of course, geofencing, as you rightly put it, can only happen once they are online. But the beauty with the kit is that once it gets locked to that particular station, it cannot be used for another station. And because there is also a SIM, and if this SIM is active, we also need the kit to transmit voter turnout data at intervals of 2-3 hours. So ideally, the kit should be connected to enable that transmission of that data. But for purposes of the register, we already preload it and we do not need connectivity to access details of voters in terms of identification. So I think I'll invite Marjan to finish off the remaining questions. Thank you very much.
Question of presidential ballot. Regulation 83 requires that, Ben Sihanya, the regulation 83 requires that the presidential shall be announced first, and that's the rule. But then there is the issue of if the presidential ballot was mistaken placed at the ballot, and yet you are starting the presidential ballot first. In some cases, there have been a problem and discrepancies as a result. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the issue of the counting of the votes, I think the regulations are very clear. It starts with the presidential ballot box first.
Okay.
And so that is not in dispute. It's already part of our training program.
For joining us.
Now, for purposes of
this session on youth as partners in blood service. My name is Rebecca Nyankia. I work with the National AIDS Control Council. I am the program officer for adolescents and young people. So really, young people are very close.
What is happening?
This session is on youth, as I said, youth as partners in blood services. And I'd like, I don't know about you, but as myself, when I was 18 or 15 or in campus, I was obviously not.
We have been overrun.
Blood or organs.
Is it a technology
so
failure?
I understand why it's an important conversation for us to have.
Complimentary.
So I think it's important for us to figure out how to engage young people more and how to make this an important cause for them, given that they're the largest number.
But anyway, if a ballot paper,
for that reason,
if a ballot is cast in the wrong ballot box,
but we also have some people joining us.
We will not transfer it to the right ballot box. And I think, Owie, you can correct me. It is a spoiled.
So when we get into the
strange,
stray
ballot paper.
So we are able to
if it is a stray ballot paper, it's not counted as a valid vote.
The purpose of this session
and that is the procedures that we have. Okay? It's already taken care of in terms of our training. In fact, we have spoiled.
So the purpose of this session is that
rejected.
Young people. What are some of the challenges that they face in terms of blood donation?
You may want to come and elaborate on that, Owie.
And how this can be a relevant conversation for them as
I'll
well.
give you a chance to elaborate on that. But if a ballot paper is not in its rightful box, then it's not counted as a validly cast ballot paper. Okay? I don't know if Ben, Prof, if it answers. Okay. Marjan?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something before Marjan answers. Mr. Chairman, we appreciate the session, and we just want to note that obviously this is a process. We want to make sure that every phase of the process is credible and believable. And I just wanted to raise an issue about procurement, and that concerns the procurement for the printing of the ballot papers. We want some more information about where the printing is being done, who is doing it, what company is responsible, and perhaps the ownership of that company. And secondly, the question of the procurement of technology. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Oh, you can hear me now. I'll stand up. I just wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, that we appreciate the process of this conversation. Obviously, we appreciate that the election is a process. We want to make sure that every phase of the electoral process is credible and believable to the public. One area that concerns us is the question of the printing of the ballot papers. We want to know who is printing the ballot papers, where they are being printed. And we want to make sure that their custody is secure. And we want to make sure that you can assure us how that security will be given for the ballot papers. It will be important for us also to know who owns the company that is printing the ballot papers. Secondly, there's a question of technology. We understand that Smartmatic is a company that is registered somewhere in Panama, is providing the technology. We'd like to know, again, the ownership of the company, the connections to the company that people in this country may or may not have, so that we can be sure that the procurement process is transparent. I think you'll appreciate our concern on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What I would like us to do, Prof, what I suggest we do is let Marjan complete the first set of questions, and then I will invite you, Professor, Chair of the Election Operations Committee, together with the two commissioners, Justice Nyangaya and Commissioner Masit, recently traveled with a team to the company where ballot papers are being printed. I think then you can share some insight on that after Marjan is done.
Okay.
And
before Marjan, come. Well, you want to read from there? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity. But I would like to pass the same to our ICT director. We have got a technical director, ICT.